One of the most common things grieving people tell me is, I feel like I'm losing my mind. And let me say this clearly right from the start, you're not. Grief changes the brain. And when you know that, you will find it easier to realize that all of the responses you're experiencing are normal. They are not something to be afraid of, they're not something to be shamed about. So, hi, I'm Megan Seacrest. I'm an LCSW and I am the current founder of Grief, Grit, Growth and my counseling practice in Oklahoma and Vermont, Gift of Grit Counseling. I wanted to talk today about the 7 weird things that grieving brains do. Things that can kind of feel alarming or jarring or confusing or even completely out of character for ourselves. And none of them mean that you're going crazy. None of them mean that you're weak or that you don't understand the loss you're going through. None of them mean that you're doing grief wrong. They mean your brain is trying to adapt, trying to learn, because our brains are always trying to learn. That's the goal of our brain, is to problem solve. And grief is a problem that is not solvable, at least not for your brain. So let's start with them. Number 1, you might start reaching for your phone to text or call the person that's died, right? Your brain still expects that loop of connection to be there, the check-in, the response, that rhythm you guys had. And the habit hasn't caught up to your reality yet. So, doesn't mean you're stuck. It doesn't mean that you are living in a fantasy that this person is still here. It means that your attachment system is still online, which is good. That's neurobiology at work, basically. Or number 2, you wake up and for a moment you forgot that they even died. This can feel a little bit terrifying the first time you experience it. What's happening is that your hippocampus, which is your memory system, it houses the memory system of your brain, hasn't really integrated the loss fully yet. So you wake up into the old world, sometimes again and again, until your brain slowly updates what is true now. Each time can feel like reopening a wound that's just barely closed over night after night. But it's actually part of how the brain learns what's changed and who's no longer on this plane of existence anymore. Number 3, you swear that you just heard their keys in the hallway, or gosh, the garage door opener, somebody must have opened it. They're here, they're home, or their footsteps, or their voice. Auditory and sensory memories are really, really strong, stronger, we think, than most others, right? Visual memory is spotty at best sometimes, but your sensory memory, so hearing and smelling in particular, big ones that stick around much longer than visual memories. And your brain is kind of used to scanning for the presence of those in the background all the time, right? Your brain sometimes gets used to false positives almost. So it doesn't mean that you're imagining things or you're hearing things that aren't there. It means that your nervous system is still orienting itself towards connection with that person. Um, if it continues for a really long time, of course, here's my disclaimer, right? If you're sitting there 4, 5, 6 years after the loss and you're still hearing their keys jingle in the background, or you swear that you could hear their footsteps, then it might be worth getting some support, right? At that point, we might say, okay, we've collapsed into what the Diagnostic Statistician's Manual would say, the DSM would say, is complicated or complex grief. Most of the time, 6 months to a year after someone has died, it is normal to experience these kind of jarring moments here and there. Okay, number 4, let me make sure I'm on track here, right? You might dream that they're alive, and then you wake up, you feel crushed all over again. And your sleeping brain, you have to remember, is slightly different from your brain when it's awake, right? Your sleeping brain is sometimes even slower to update its visual map. So when we think of a visual map, it's how our brain sees the people we love in the context of their environment. So I know that sounds kind of complicated, but I want you for a second to think about the first time you were away from somebody you loved. Maybe it was a spouse, or a child went away to college, or somebody moved to a new house and you hadn't been there yet. Oftentimes, our brain will want us to ask things like, hey, show me your hotel room, or I'd love to see the new house, or Hey, I'd love to come by your office of your new job so I can place where you're at in my mind. You may not say it like that, but that's what your brain is trying to do. It's trying to picture the person in the context of the environment they're in. So you can imagine them being somewhere separate from you and still connected to you. Well, what does death do? None of us have a concrete idea exactly of what the afterlife, or even if there is an afterlife, what that will be like, right? So we don't have a visual map of where our loved one might be, and we don't even know what that existence would look like for them. So it's really hard for your brain to look and go, okay, let's update the visual map. Oh, wait, this is like trying to code and then running out of room almost, or like you're painting a picture and all of a sudden you run out of the green that you need to complete the meadow that you were working on. Your brain cannot create something out of its imagination that does justice. So while you're sleeping, your brain goes back to default mode. They're alive in the dream. Waking up after those dreams doesn't mean that are there's something wrong with you, right? Dreams also don't follow logic or timelines, right? They follow our attachment to people and places and ideas. So it doesn't mean you're regressing if that's the case. Okay, number 5. You see someone across the grocery store or the parking lot and your heart leaps. Your brain goes, that's them, right? You have a flash of recognition. It's your brain's predictive processing system trying to complete the bond, right? This all goes back to this. Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor really did a great job of this in The Grieving Brain. So if you want to look for a wonderful read on explaining the neuroscience behind grief, she has tons of good information there. But this is the predictive processing of the brain trying to complete this connection, this bond, right? Your brain is wired to expect this person. So when it catches a glimpse of someone or something that looks familiar, it fills it in for you. It goes, that's them. Brains are really good at that. That surge doesn't mean that you're sitting there hoping that they're still alive. It's just your habit meeting their absence. Okay, number 6. You feel like you're going crazy because parts of you don't believe it yet, right? This is really important. Disbelief is not the same thing as denial. Okay, disbelief is your brain and your mind trying to reconcile love and permanence. So think about that again. Your brain struggles sometimes with object permanence, particularly with someone we deeply love. And what is less permanent in some ways and yet more permanent than them not being here on your plane of existence anymore, than them being gone? So different parts of your brain update at different speeds too. So it doesn't mean that you're avoiding reality or that you are denying that this death happened. It means you're human. You're doing the best you can. Again, we're going to go back to this a lot on this channel. You really are doing the best you can most of the time. And then number 7, you panic about forgetting something about them, their laugh or their smell or their handwriting or the sound of their voice. And your brain really wants to cling tightly to sensory details while it also struggles with memory gaps, right? Our memory is not perfect. And that can feel really scary as a person, right? When you're thinking about the loved one, a lot of times for my grieving parents, they'll think about their children they've lost and they'll say, well, someday I'm going to forget what their skin felt like, or I'm going to forget their little laugh, or like how they used to giggle, or, I'm going to forget the way that they sounded when they were upset. And you know what? That is hard. That's a hard thing to sit with. That it is possible that you won't be able to hold on to every single memory of every sensory detail of the person that's gone. And yet, it is the price of loving someone. Loss is the price of love. Come. All of these experiences are grief. They're not pathology, right? You are not a diagnosis. Your experience doesn't meet the neat criteria of a diagnosis. They're signs of your brain trying to reorganize what it knows to be true around the absence of someone who mattered deeply to you. Understanding all this doesn't mean that your pain's going to go away either. I want to make that clear, right? But it does take away some of the shame that we feel. And I hope, anyways, that it normalizes for a lot of you that these are universal experiences. I can tell you they're universal with pretty good confidence because I hear them, some form or variation of all of these fears, all of these experiences, at least a couple times a week, and have for the last, gosh, well, for the entirety of the 10 years that I've been in practice, but definitely significantly more in the last 5 to 7 years. Grief is one of the heaviest things that human beings carry. So in the next video, we're going to talk about what actually helps a grieving nervous system, what tends to kind of make things worse. And if your grief has made you feel really unfamiliar even to yourself, you are not alone. So if you want to check that out, come on down.